So right about now, you're probably faced with, well, let's face it, hundreds, if not thousands, of Google Pixel 9 Pro XL reviews because the embargo has lifted. And honestly, whilst I'd love it if people read my reviews and watched my reviews, they shouldn't do that exclusively. So I'm joined here today by award-winning tech journo and another man who has also reviewed the Pixel 9 Pro XL from Pickr. It's Leigh Stark. Hi, Lee.
Hey, how you going?
Not too bad. A little tired. I've been working very hard on this one, as have you. So let's jump right into it. We're not, just to be clear with people, we are not going to be reviewing the phones here on this particular stream. Instead, we're going to be comparing notes because what happens with the reviewers, I find, is that everyone has a slightly different experience. Obviously, people have different worldviews, but what you find from a phone can be different. And that can have a lot of utility for different people and their needs. Would you agree, Lee?
Yeah, mostly. I mean, I find in general a lot of reviews tend to be very similar. So if you read Alex's, you'll probably find similar notes to what's in mine. But some of the little key things will stand out about our user experience, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a certain amount of subjectivity to a review, and that should be expected. And in fact, that can be really beneficial. So let's jump right into it. First of all, let's talk about the design. I think we're basically on an accord here.
Yeah, look, it's a nice design, but it's also one that borrows very familiarly from phones we've seen in the past. I mean, Samsung has been doing the flat edge for a while. Apple's been doing it the longest. This is kind of borrowing from that theme. That's not a bad thing. There's only so many ways you can, I guess, design a phone at this point in time. It's kind of the thing I find interesting is that the thickness, which is actually not far off the Apple's one, is actually slightly more uh when you notice the extrusion on the back.
Yeah, well, I think that the camera bar becoming a camera pill, camera stadium, there's a couple of different terms for a rounded
Yeah.
rectangle, basically. But the camera bar change, I thought I was going to like it a lot more. I kind of find now that I'm just ignoring it. It's just there. It's not a bad thing. It's just kind of there. And I guess if you're a Pixel phone upgrader, it might be a little annoying because you're going to have to upgrade your case.
Yeah, there's that. One of the things I liked about it is that when you lay it flat on a surface, one, it doesn't actually technically lie flat, it lies in an incline. But one of the things I actually like about it is that it's actually fairly stable. I didn't have that, for instance, there was a phone I reviewed this year from Asus, the Zenfone 11 Ultra, and I found that every time I touched the phone that was on a surface, it would kind of bend, almost like it was a chair leg that wasn't sitting there properly. Google has done a good job balancing this. As you said before, you still kind of need a new case. You probably would have anyway because the flat edges would have changed it. But yeah, it's not a bad design. It just reminds me of kind of like what Google would do if they interpreted the iPhone.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I mean, we should also talk colors because, well, I have the pink one. I'm not a big fan of
Uh,
pink. This is not the color I would choose. However, as anyone who's watched any of my phone reviews will know, I favor cases, and this thing's going in a case right now.
Now
I felt
that's
bad not having it
interesting.
in a case.
That's so interesting because they sent me the greenish looking one, but the pink case.
So they did that with the Pixel 9 that they sent me. They sent me the pink case for that. So someone at
Huh.
Google Australia is just having a lot of fun sending these devices out in
Yeah,
mix and match
totally.
colors. But
I actually kind of wanted the pink phone, but only because I was kind of curious what it looked like. We should do a trade next time. I'm worried though that my girls would end up taking it because every time they saw the pink case on the greenish phone, they kept on trying to steal the pink case with the greenish phone in it.
the cases match the colors pretty closely, so you probably don't need to borrow this to know that it's very, very pink. And for some people, that will be great, of course.
Mm,
But the design is fine. I do like the fact that we get choice in sizes without particular compromises. Obviously, the
mm.
regular 9 Pro is smaller, so smaller screen and slightly smaller battery. But it's not like it's got different cameras. It's not like it's got a degraded processor or anything like that. Although neither of us have been able to actually test that 9 Pro as yet.
Yeah, it's also the fact we've not been able to benchmark it properly either, which is one of the things that
Mm.
bothers me about when Google releases these phones. It takes a while for Google to actually authorize or approve Geekbench or any of the other benchmarking applications. So it's difficult to know how much faster, for instance, this device is. But yeah, early release, it's a nice looking phone. I don't think like I've been using it both with the case and without the case at times. I think it's a really elegant looking phone. It feels really good in the hands as well. It's slippery, which downside of a
Oh yeah.
polished back.
Again, cases, people. But yes,
Mm,
agreed. Totally.
you definitely want the case, but they say it's more durable. I'm not willing to drop this phone because I'm not someone who likes durability testing my devices. But if you do drop it, Google says it's sturdier than last year's, so yay until you buy a new one, I guess.
Yay until you break it. They say it's like twice as durable and like it's still IP68. It's not IP 136 because that doesn't exist, people.
Hmm.
But yeah, yay until you break it. Although, look, you mentioned the benchmarking and performance stuff, so we may as well jump over to that because this was the year where my patience with that and Google. Honestly, I can't see another reason other than Google playing games to obfuscate Tensor's actual performance. The Tensor G4 for these phones, of course, because this always happens. About a month after these phones come out, suddenly benchmarks are available for them. And we saw this, I mean, most blatantly with like the Pixel 8a, which is a Tensor G3 phone, same as the
Hmm.
Pixel 8, but the 8a couldn't run those benchmarks and the 8 could until about a month after. So I sideloaded just to get a kind of comparative picture with the asterisk that, yeah, they're not quite final benchmark scores.
Yeah, look, what did your benchmark say in close proximity to the G3 versus G4?
So it's faster than the G3, which it should be, more towards kind of multi-core than single-core operation. But single-core operation across most of these phones is, is fast
It's
enough,
it's
and there's not a
it,
lot of
it's
difference.
consistent these days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. It's faster than that, but it's still well behind the Galaxy S24 Ultra, and especially, of course, the iPhones, where Apple's had a big performance advantage over its rivals for quite some time now. And I think my big problem with that is not so much, oh, it's not as fast, because I kind of forgave that on the
Mm.
Pixel 8 Pro. It's the fact that this is now a much more expensive phone as well.
Yeah, I can see that problem. I can also see the issue with simply if it's slower. I mean, a lot of people use their devices more than just apps. Apps are single core, multi-core, fine, whatever. It's when you get into areas like games that rely on graphical prowess, when it's much further behind and you're still charging that same premium, that's where I start to raise the red flags about things because Samsung's S24 Ultra is a fast phone this year, thanks
Mm.
to the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. And the iPhone last year was fast. And we can expect whatever the new chip we're getting this year will be equally fast. But to have this thing slower in every aspect is kind of a problem long term because you do expect your phone to last with you several years, especially when it's being advertised with 7 years of updates.
Yeah, and I mean the S24 is a really good contrast there, of course, because Samsung's doing that as well. They won't have Android upgrades as fast as Google because they're Google,
Hmm.
but they will have them and on a phone that's going to feel current and timely for a fair while longer than this with. I do think that is an issue that Google hasn't quite solved. Although Google's pitch around this, of course, is that AI will solve everything. Leigh, will AI solve everything?
Well, based on the time we've spent with this, I don't know what AI solves on this phone, let alone AI solving everything in general. There are some clever ideas here, don't get me wrong. So it's probably worth talking about the AI. This is an AI phone, and everything that Google does is AI these days. That's the reason why the Chromecast is disappearing to make way for the TV streamer, because it's got AI in it as well. So Google's doubling down on AI, shock horror. But this has AI features for a lot of image editing, which may or may not be useful. It's got AI editing for generating wallpapers, which in fairness, every phone company is trying
Everyone's
this
got
year.
that, yeah.
That's not a new feature. It's got AI for voice transcription, it's got AI for noise reduction in movies and things like that. But it also has AI for screenshots, and that might be the most useful form of AI I've seen in a phone in a while, which is specific to Pixel at the moment, but it makes me wonder for how much longer. It's a feature that allows you to, every time you capture a screenshot, it analyzes what's in that screenshot and kind of turns it into text, allowing you to add it to other things later on.
Yeah, I like this. I mean, I did see it described as kind of Google's take on Microsoft's Recall, a feature
Huh.
which I really didn't like. But then
Yeah.
Recall is constant and always screenshotting everything you do. This is screenshot on demand. You take a screenshot and then it will work with it, which I think
Mm.
is a smarter, more user-centric approach. But then you've also got AI features like Gemini Advanced. So you get 12 months of Gemini Advanced when you get this phone.
Mm.
And this is meant to be Google's more conversational AI bot.
It's
Um,
ChatGPT for Google, basically.
yeah, I've had some pretty weird conversations with Gemini Advanced, and I don't think that's just because I'm a weird guy, although I am. What's your experience been like, Lee?
I used it a few times and found it wasn't actually helpful for my life. I also found it didn't actually understand who I was. I had to start training it again, which I thought was weird given I've been reviewing Google devices since Android was a thing, and I found it really quite remarkable that I was still training it to actually respond to me at times. I I said this in my review. I don't know whether AI is actually genuinely useful in a phone yet. It might take a lot more time, but I wouldn't buy this phone on the pretense that I'm buying it for AI. I'd buy it because it's a good phone, not an AI phone.
Yeah, and look, I think it's tricky as well because Google kind of are putting themselves on a clock with this. You get
Mm,
12 months of Gemini Advanced included, and the nice cherry there is you also get 2 terabytes of Google Cloud storage in that tier because not because they're sweetening this particular phone, it's actually because that's part of the Gemini Advanced
that's part of the
package.
plan.
You
Yeah.
don't have to buy this phone to get Gemini Advanced, but after that, you're on the hook for 32.99, and that's per month.
Per month, that's right. And it gets expensive. And I know Samsung has said at the end of next year that its AI features will probably cost money. They haven't said how much, but they have said a cost is coming. But they've actually said that's a while off. This is basically 1 year of knowledge that you have this for a year. And after that, $33 a month is not an inexpensive amount to pay on top for a feature that you may or may not be using. Now, the upside, I guess, is that you're getting a Pixel and you've got a year to try out whether Gemini is good for you. But again, it's worth pointing out AI is only going to get better from this point in time. So testing it for the next year and then working out that you could still use it a year from now. Okay, I get that, but you're probably going to get the least amount of use now compared to maybe a year when it's refined and better.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is a genuine review challenge. This could be a very different phone in 6 months, in 12 months. It might not be. My general advice there is always to people buy what it can do now, because while we can say,
Totally.
oh, AI should get better, it might not get better in a way that is meaningful to you. But speaking and very briefly touching on features that we kind of wish were there or wish were coming, you know this is coming, Lee. I'm going to
I know this
complain
is
about
coming.
millimeter wave
I'm staring at the
5G.
devices right now. Huh?
Yeah,
5G?
5G,
Yeah.
millimeter wave. It was on the Pixel
Yeah.
8 Pro. It's not on this, and I am ticked off.
Yeah, I actually don't blame you. And I find it frustrating. So millimeter wave should be here. It's simply because it's been on all previous major Pixels on the six, the 6 Pro, sorry, the 6 Pro,
On
the
the
7 Pro,
pros,
and the
yeah.
8 Pro. It's on the Pro model. So, and it was something that Telstra and Vodafone could actually take advantage of because they both have millimeter wave networks in this country. So clearly, Australians do want it, even in short amounts. It technically exists, and Google have removed it from this model, despite the fact that you can get millimeter wave models outside the country because other countries use millimeter wave more than we do. I'm surprised Google removed it, largely because it was there, they were leading the charge. Whether or not the market necessarily saw more phones with it wasn't the point. You could use it if you had it. Now, the only millimeter wave phones are the old models, which is
Yeah,
confusing
the
because
best the
millimeter
best
wave,
millimeter wave phone we've got is the Pixel 8 Pro. And
which is
I think
insane.
it hits me more than just, oh, well, we've got millimeter wave in Australia, which we do, and to be fair, not in a whole host of places.
No.
It's not super widespread. But Australians travel. If you travel to
Yep.
the States with this phone that I'm holding, well, I'm going to wonder how you stole it off me in the first place. But
Huh.
leaving that aside, if you travel with this model of this phone, you won't be able to access the same networks and speeds as you will if you bought this phone in the States. But you bring that here, and yeah, it'll still work fine on our sub 6 networks. That feels like bad value to me. And surely Google is only saving like maybe a few cents per chip on what are the rest of the world phones, although there's some weird variants for France and Japan and I think Belgium as well. But
I also
yeah,
think Google's reason, I
it
mean,
hurts.
you asked about this at the launch, and I think
Mm.
Google's reason of, well, the market doesn't, demand it anymore. I don't know if that's true because I highly doubt either Telstra or Vodafone would invest the millions it would take to actually put millimeter wave on their networks, only to find, hey, the market doesn't demand it. I'm confused by that.
I think what they're talking about as the market is, oh, Samsung and Apple have got away without offering millimeter wave to Australians, so we can too. That's the
Chat,
market I suspect they're speaking to.
lead by example. I mean,
I
Google
wish they
for the
would.
long for the
I wish they would.
past 3 years, Google did lead by example. Whether we asked Samsung this at the S24 Ultra launch earlier in the year, and they said they just didn't see it being basically
Hmm.
useful in the country. But Google did. They said the devices were out there. Okay, cool. Google should have kept doing that. You're not wrong. It should be in this device simply because it was actually a useful included feature. It's far more useful than the temperature sensor on the back, which nobody uses. And it's still
Yeah,
here, by the way. It's right
yeah.
there. And the app has changed. The app is actually slightly more refined. So Google's investing time on that, but for some reason has removed millimeter wave on a phone that actually would benefit from it.
Yeah, I still can't work out a really good use case for the temperature sensor. It's just there. But shifting along, Leigh, you're a man who has forgotten more about photography than I will ever know. And again,
Evident
though,
by all
I
the
found,
cameras behind me.
yeah, I found the camera story for this phone was an interesting one because we've got the hardware and then we've got the AI stuff.
Yeah, so
So how'd you find the hardware
the hardware is
broadly?
exceptional. I mean, you'd expect the hardware to be good. Google is very good at building a phone camera. We've seen fantastic phone cameras, even dating back to the 4. The 4 was actually still an exceptional Pixel with an exceptional camera. I still can't believe that you can get astrophotography working on a camera that old and that inexpensive at the time. All that stuff is here. I like the combination that you've got a 50 megapixel main with a fairly low aperture. You've got a 48 megapixel working at both ultra wide and 5x telephoto. I think both of those work really well. I think the macro surprised me because it was very detailed, but it got soft remarkably easy. I found actually the iPhone's macro was much easier to control than the Pixels, but most
You've
of the
got some
imagery is.
astonishingly good macro shots in your review. And by the way,
Thank
people,
you.
we will put links to all of the reviews that we've done in the description below. Please go and have a look at those. But Leigh's macro shots, they're just excellent.
The focal distance control on this is actually not bad, but you'll see if you look at the images, you'll actually see that the sharpest points are specifically one part of the focal range, and I found it remarkably easy that it would soften and blur everything else. That's not something I see on the iPhone's equivalent. The iPhones seem to get sharper shots in macro than what I was seeing on here, but I need to do way more testing with this. But overall, like the images are superb. This is exactly what you'd expect out of a Google Pixel camera. It is a top-notch camera. I don't think it's light years ahead of what I saw last year. And I had someone ask me
Mm.
the other day, so I said, I can't tell you this till today. And I told them this morning, so what did you think about the Pixel 8 Pro camera versus the 9? I said, if you've got the 8 Pro, there's literally no reason to upgrade except maybe if you want macros, and even then. So,
But I
like,
think, I mean, I think personally, I think the year-on-year upgrade argument
oh yeah.
really only makes sense to the people who feel like they have to have the latest and greatest. It doesn't make financial sense, and
No.
it doesn't really often make performance sense either.
No, you're absolutely right. So the camera here is exceptional. The software is where things get interesting to me because, as you said, the AI and some AI and lack of AI is where things are actually unusual for me. Because, for instance, we had a super blue moon the other week, and I thought it was a really interesting test to actually take the iPhone, the Galaxy S24 Ultra, which has a neat trick for that, and the Pixel all out
Called
to take a
AI
picture.
cheating. Yep.
It's AI cheating, you're not wrong. And not, the AI in this phone could not work out how to actually lower the brightness even when I was forcing it to. The iPhone clearly couldn't. iPhones aren't very good with bright moonshots. But of course, Samsung's AI addition to that could because it's cheating. For people who don't know, Samsung's Galaxy S24 Ultra is trained on a view of the moon, which we can only see from planet Earth. So as a result, when you take a picture of the moon, it kind of samples from that image and gives you a created version of the moon, even from your point of view, kind of juxtaposed in the screen in the sky that you have. So you're
Now I
getting a
want
shot
someone
that
on
you're
the ISS to like take a photo from there just to see what Samsung's AI does. But I digress.
probably wouldn't work, but they're also given Nikon's to go up there with anyway. They've got better cameras. But yeah, that's the point. So you're always going to get a decent shot with the AI in Samsung's
Mm.
S24 Ultra and some of the previous models. You won't get the AI infiltrating in those ways on the Pixel, which I actually thought was rather interesting, given it could have. But there are AI editing tools in here, like for turning parts of your scene into something else. One of the craziest ones I had an example of was I took a picture of an empty plate on my dinner table and was able to turn it into a plate of pasta and a plate of. I was able to fill my plate digitally with things that shouldn't be there until my daughter said, "Can you put a cooked frog on my plate?" I was like, "Okay, sure." And we could put a cooked frog on the plate. So
How
you've
very
got
French.
a right, totally. It's perfect timing for the Paris Olympics. So you've got these AI features that feel like they don't really benefit anything beyond having fun. They don't actually result in better quality images. But even if the camera
So
itself can
I
take
mean,
fantastic photos.
I had some issues there, partially because some of the stuff, this is Reimagine we're talking about as
Mm.
is the feature there. Partially because some of the images it produced were your classic AI horror shows of weird things. It turned one of my cats into this mangy lion puppet hybrid. It's just all people go have a look at the photo in the review. So that there's partially that problem. I also don't like the fact, even the ones that I've seen now that do look good. I mean, some of yours do look reasonably realistic, they're not tagged that way. And for example, when
No,
you
you're right.
do that with Samsung's AI, it actually watermarks it, like does a text watermark on the
Little
image
stars at the bottom that
to
says
say, yeah,
AI, basically.
that it's AI created. Google hasn't done that. My understanding is that there may be something tagged in the metadata to indicate it, but I'd much rather have something on screen to say elements of this aren't real, basically.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. And it's really bizarre as well when you think about that because Google is championing AI ahead of time, and it's weird that Samsung actually has that watermark for anyone else. I imagine an Adobe version would be quite similar because Adobe's been very forthcoming with putting like watermarks on its own gear. I haven't checked the metadata, I'll be honest. I haven't looked through it that comprehensively. I will find it interesting that one of the features, and I'm not sure if you noticed this between the standard Pixel 9 and the Pixel 9 Pro/Pro XL is just the pro mode in the software. And I found that really unusual because what like I got stuck on the price. I know we'll get into this in a
Mm,
second, but one of the things that actually I found weird was that the pro mode, which does exist on this phone, allows you to change ISO, which is
mm.
largely meaningless on a device like this, and shutter speed and things like that. That's the pro feature effectively beyond the telephoto lens, and that's pretty much it. That separates these two devices, the Pixel 9 slash Pixel 9 slash Pro XL, which I found odd because a lot of people aren't going to care about that telephoto. Oh, sorry, about that Pro mode. Even on this Pro phone, you largely don't rely on it. You have to actually kind of dig to find it, and it just doesn't seem like it could have been, I guess, implemented that well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you. I think the people who are going to care about the pro mode settings probably want a better camera anyway, in a sense,
Yep.
and not that this is a bad camera.
No, this
Whereas
is a
the
great camera.
telephoto on this, a lot more people are going to care about. And actually, this brings me into another AO feature, which actually I thought worked really well, which is the whole zoom enhance thing. So this thing does up
Hmm.
to 30 times zoom, and once you get up to that kind of zoom on pretty much any smartphone, you're getting pretty rubbishy kind of images without a tripod, and even with one, they're not great.
No.
And this does AI sharpening in essence on the device. And I was surprised at how well it worked. A lot of the shots that I took that I thought, okay, yep, that's a typical 30 times shot. Okay, well, let's zoom enhance it. And it's fairly intelligent. That bit of AI functions quite well, I found.
The oversharpening does seem to do a decent job. I tested this even without that, without zooming in,
Mm,
and I could actually see on macros it was actually oversharpening ever so slightly, which isn't a bad thing. It sometimes is quite beneficial. But again, you can also, if you need to, switch to like a 50 megapixel mode or the high res mode,
mm.
and that should effectively turn this sort of feature off. So it is good to see that you've got these options there to make the camera experience better than just say the standard 12 megapixel downsampling that you might expect.
Now, I'm going to wrap this up because we have spoken for a while, and I do want people to have the time to actually go and read our reviews and watch my video reviews and so on. But I will say, I thought you were probably a little bit more positive than I was about this phone. I don't hate this phone. I think the hardware's really good. The AI side and the cost of AI bugs me probably a little more than you. But we should talk about cost because I think that is
Hmm.
the other problem with this phone, or potential problem with this phone, isn't
I
it?
mean, the models we were sent are $2,000 phones, so it's worth pointing out that this is a little bit less expensive, I guess, than the comparable iPhone, which is the obvious one to compare it against. But by the same token, the next iPhone is literally about to come out, and it's more likely that Apple will keep the price the same, but you're about to get a whole stack of new features that possibly are better than this one. Keeping the price on there though, this is more expensive than previous Pixel Pro models. Like, and that
Mm.
to me is a bit of a problem because Google has always cemented itself as kind of like the leader slash underdog that was willing to actually beat the competition both on price and everything else. This is now as expensive pretty much as everything else.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the Galaxy S24 Ultra, and okay, we're what, maybe 4 months away, 5 months away from its successor coming out.
Yep.
But the S24 Ultra can fairly easily or regularly be seen on sale at similar prices to this, maybe even a little cheaper because it's a slightly older phone. And as you say, that point where you could say, well, the Pixel's not quite as fast, but it's so much cheaper, it's gone now. That
Yep.
advantage that Google had is gone. And I think that makes for a challenging market position for them. It makes it a challenging thing to say, go out and absolutely buy this. I was very keen last year. I said as much.
Mm.
I thought the Pixel 8 Pro was an excellent phone for the money because it was. Whereas I think this is just a good phone for a lot of money.
Yeah, I don't disagree. The value on this one kind of stumps me again. Also, that Pixel 9 feels like it's actually technically better value. Still more expensive than I think it should be, to be honest. I feel like the Pixel 9, the models underneath should be less expensive than what they are. I feel like Google has said, hey, we know we're as premium as the rest of everyone else. We can now afford that. And that's I guess, look, that's totally Google's choice to do that. But as you said, the S24 Ultra is pretty much the other major Android phone to consider in Australia this year. And it is and can be found for a little bit less, if not the same, but comes with that faster chip, comes with in a capable or as capable, if not more capable, camera system based on its 200 megapixel sensor, and has that really excellent S Pen feature if you need it. That was one of the things I felt like I wanted to add to my review, but I couldn't find the right paragraph to it. I love this phone. Don't get me wrong, and you're right, I'm more positive than you. But one of the things that actually bothered me about it was that there's no major wow feature that kind of separates it from everything else. It's just a phone with a great camera and it's a well-rounded package, which I did write about, but sometimes that's not enough. The iPhone actually does incredible video, does some really cool things with that ProRes capability. This doesn't have ProRes. This doesn't have any raw video capability whatsoever, and it doesn't have QI2, which really bothered me because if anything should have had QI2 this year, it should have been the last major Android release of this year. Whereas the S Pen doesn't have QI2, that's true, it should have had it as well, but it has an S Pen. It gives you that something extra you can use the phone with. And that's what I thought was lacking about this. It is a fantastic phone. I won't, as you said, I am more positive than you on this, and I'm still not sure the value is right, but it doesn't have some incredible wow feature that makes you go, hey, Pixel over everything else. It's just probably the best Android all round right now.
Yeah, look, I think that's fair, and I agree with you. And I did write to a certain extent about the lack of Qi 2, and surprising to note today, of all
Mm,
days, that we've actually had the announcement of the first Qi T phone. I've already done a very short video on this today as well,
mm.
and it's HMD, which I did not see
That's-
coming because while they do some really interesting things in market, they're not usually technology leaders in that way.
no, a phone that costs under $1,000 having the new wireless standard that's been only so far on an iPhone had me to totally stumped. But there's and we've spoken about this before online. This should have had QI2, Qi2, whatever you want to call it, simply because it's a glass back there and there's nothing stopping Google beyond price.
Yeah, they built this to a price, but it feels like they don't want to subsidize it to the same extent. But anyway, what people should now do is go and check out Leigh's review at pickr.com.au, go and check out
Y-
my review at alexreviewstech.com, and of course on this very YouTube channel you'll find a whole slew of Pixel 9 Pro XL content. And thanks to well, first of all, thanks to you, Leigh, for joining me for this informative chat.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks to everyone for watching. We'll grab you next time.